Picture this for a second. The champagne is finally popping.
Oh, the best feeling.
Right. The war room is clearing out. You and your project team have just survived cutover weekend, staring at screens until like 3 in the morning. The SAP system is live, the historical data has migrated over, and while the core business processes are actually working.
It's a huge relief.
It really is. You're packing up your desk, you're looking around at your exhausted colleagues, and you think to yourself, we did it. We crossed the finish line.
And it is an incredible feeling. I mean, that go-live moment is a massive, legitimate milestone for any organization that takes on a major ERP transformation.
Absolutely. But the somewhat terrifying truth we are exploring today is that you haven't crossed the finish line at all.
Not even close?
You have just arrived at the starting line. So welcome to this deep dive. We are taking you on a journey through the true life cycle of an enterprise system. Our mission today is to unpack 2 really essential guides that we've got in front of us. One is basically a masterclass on building an SAP compliance architecture that actually survives contact with the real world. And the other is, well, it's a survival guide for the people building it, the finance and controlling consultants trying to navigate this completely new era.
Yeah, and the core tension we have to establish right away here is that the regulatory world out there does not freeze in place just because your SAP system went live.
Exactly.
A compliance architecture that your technical team deems, absolutely perfect this morning can become a massive, incredibly expensive liability in just a few short months.
Because the ground is constantly shifting beneath your feet. I mean, reading through these sources, it becomes clear that your architecture is getting hit from multiple directions simultaneously.
Little constantly.
You have existing laws that are always changing, like Italy's Factura PA e-invoicing schema, which has been updated and tweaked multiple times since it was introduced.
Right.
Or Poland's KSEF, their centralized clearing system, which is going through several really complex technical revisions.
And then you have the shock to the system of a country suddenly turning on a brand new mandate.
Out of nowhere.
Right, a jurisdiction where you've operated for years with just simple paper invoices or basic PDF summaries suddenly decides they want real-time digital compliance.
Wow.
So now you have to support entirely new electronic document types and connect to new government submission channels.
And that's just the external stuff.
Exactly. Add to that changes your own business creates, like acquiring a competitor or opening an entity in a new market, and your compliance footprint expands overnight.
Not to mention the software itself is evolving. SAP's S/4HANA Cloud pushes out quarterly updates.
Yep.
And if your architecture is tightly bound to specific technical approaches, say you heavily customized your setup using proprietary ABA code, which is, SAP's internal programming language, every single one of those quarterly SAP updates is a potential compatibility risk.
It's a huge risk.
Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy because this really stood out to me. It feels like pouring a beautiful, thick concrete foundation for a house, but physically trapping all of your plumbing pipes inside that concrete.
That analogy captures the risk perfectly because, the embedded approach works completely fine on day one.
Right, you turn on the faucet, the water flows, everyone's happy.
Exactly. But 2 years later, the city changes the building codes. Or maybe you need to add a new bathroom for an expanding family.
You can't just twist a wrench under the sink.
No, you can't. Because the pipes are trapped in the concrete, you have to bring in a crew with jackhammers, tear up the entire foundation, splice the pipe, and pour new concrete.
Just hoping you didn't crack the main water line in the process.
Right. And in the SAP ecosystem, that jackhammering is a formal SAP change request.
Ugh, the dreaded change request.
Yes. If your complex tax logic to the specific rates, the reporting rules, the exemptions for a given country is embedded deep inside the SAP core, you can't just flip a switch when the law changes.
Wow, okay.
Every single regulatory update requires a developer to write new ABAP modifications. That triggers rigorous regression testing across your whole system.
Which takes forever.
It does. And then you have to transport that code to production, usually requiring you to, big the business for a weekend deployment window where you can actually take the system offline.
So the logical question is, how do we build the house with the plumbing outside the concrete?
Yeah, that's the goal.
Reading about decoupled architecture and the sources, it sounds like the solution is drawing a hard boundary between the financial system of record and the tax calculation engine.
That is the exact mechanism. Decoupling works by utilizing standard SAP data payloads.
Hmm.
So instead of SAP trying to figure out all the complex tax rules for a transaction in Brazil or Spain,
Which is incredibly complicated.
highly complicated,
Yeah.
instead of that, the SAP core simply gathers up the basic details of the sale. What is being sold, to whom, for how much.
Okay.
It packages that data into a standard format and hands it off to an external, specialized compliance engine using standard published APIs.
It's like putting a letter in a standardized envelope and handing it to the post office. SAP doesn't need to know the specific route the letter takes, right? It just formats the envelope correctly.
Exactly. And that external engine opens the envelope, reads the data, applies the constantly shifting local tax laws, calculates the exact requirements, and hands the final compliant answer back to SAP.
That makes so much sense.
Because the external engine houses all the messy logic, a change in Italian tax law becomes a simple configuration update in that external platform.
Oh, wow. So you aren't writing new code in SAP at all?
No, you are just updating the rules in the tax engine.
That's brilliant.
Furthermore, because you are passing that data back and forth using SAP's standard published APIs rather than some bespoke custom integration code, SAP essentially guarantees backward compatibility.
Oh, so when they update S4HANA next quarter.
Your integration doesn't break.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, though. If this externalized, decoupled architecture avoids the jackhammers and clearly saves a massive amount of technical headache, it begs the question, why are SAP project teams still building it the old embedded way?
It's a great question.
Like, does it cost a fortune to set up initially?
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm an IT project manager and my yearly bonus is tied to delivering this massive SAP migration by an aggressive Q3 deadline, I might be tempted to take shortcuts.
And that is exactly it. The implementation phase is an intense pressure cooker.
Right.
Hard-coding tax rules directly into SAP often seems like the path of least resistance in the short term. It skips the need to procure a third-party tax engine, it avoids adding an external integration phase to the project plan, and it gives the illusion of speed.
The illusion of speed.
Yeah. The implementation team embeds the logic, tests it against today's laws, hits their go-live date, and celebrates.
But they're leaving behind an economic time bomb for whoever takes over the next day.
A massive one.
The sources use a phrase that really stuck with me. An SAP go live is the last decision the implementation team makes and the first decision the operations team inherits.
That one sentence explains millions of dollars in wasted IT budgets.
Millions.
Easily. Over a decade of operation, the traditional method of embedding detailed tax logic creates a compounding maintenance burden. The operations team is forced to fund custom development projects for every single VAT rate change, every new mandate, and every filing format update.
Sounds exhausting.
It's entirely unsustainable. But organizations that make the right design decisions during the blueprint phase, choosing to externalize that logic, will spend the next decade effortlessly extending their compliance capabilities to new markets through simple configuration tweaks.
So if this embedded architecture is such a financial disaster, we have to look at the human gangs designing it.
We do.
The SAP consultants on the ground. The source material outlines a survival guide for the finance and controlling or FICO consultants. And the reality is that the consultant who was absolutely top tier 5 years ago might be walking into today's blueprinting workshops completely blind to this new reality.
It's true. Their traditional skills are still foundational, of course.
Right.
Designing an effective chart of accounts, configuring document structures, streamlining the month-end financial close and organization needs all of that. But those skills are no longer sufficient on their own because the requirements of government authorities have fundamentally transformed.
Because of what the guides call continuous transaction controls?
Yes, we are living in the era of continuous transaction controls, or CTCs.
So these continuous transaction controls, reading the source, it sounds like governments aren't waiting around for a month-end PDF summary report anymore.
Not at all.
They want a digital pulse on every single sale the second the register pings.
They want that digital pulse, and they demand it in highly specific, machine-readable formats. Government validation platforms now require SAP financial documents to contain incredibly granular mandatory fields, perfectly populated at the exact moment of posting, like business partner, VAT numbers, and line item tax classifications.
So what does this all mean for the consultant? It's like, well, think of a master chef who spent their entire career only having to worry about how the food tasted for the guests out in the dining room.
I like this analogy.
Right. As long as the dish was delicious and looked great, the chef succeeded. But suddenly, the government changes the rules. Now, that same chef has to guarantee that every single ingredient on the plate meets real-time FDA tracking regulations, formatted perfectly into a database, before the plate is even allowed to leave the kitchen.
Exactly.
The chef's core job is still cooking, but a massive layer of mandatory compliance has been dropped right on top of the cutting board.
And if the chef ignores that new layer, the restaurant gets shut down.
Wow.
For the FICO consultant, adapting to this isn't a critique of their financial expertise. It is a necessary elevation of their role. It changes the fundamental questions they have to ask during the initial blueprint workshops.
Right, the questions change.
Historically, a consultant's primary question was, what does the internal accounting team need to see?
Now they also have to ask, what does the external government platform need to receive?
Precisely. If a consultant doesn't understand the specific integration interface between SAP and the compliance platform before they start configuring the system, they are going to design an architecture that instantly needs to be ripped out and reworked.
Which is why the source calls for these consultants to become better generalists.
Yes, they can no longer operate in a pure finance silo. They have to actively collaborate with indirect tax specialists. They must monitor the regulatory horizon.
Looking ahead.
Always. If Saudi Arabia is launching phase 3 of a mandate 2 years from now, those technical requirements are probably documented right now while you are blueprinting. You have to build the data structures today to support the regulations of tomorrow.
Because it's not just the government's demanding this pristine, standardized, real-time data. We have to talk about the company's own internal ambitions, specifically artificial intelligence.
Oh, this is a massive piece of the puzzle.
Every major organization is trying to layer AI over their enterprise data to unlock predictive insights, right?
Right. And AI is the ultimate, incredibly demanding consumer of this data. Artificial intelligence systems operating on SAP financial data require that data to be structurally consistent, semantically coherent, and entirely complete.
When we say structurally consistent, I assume we mean the underlying data architecture has to be rigidly standardized across the entire global operation. Like, if I'm feeding years of global sales data to an AI, and the German team logs a specific customer discount in, let's call it data field A, but the Brazilian team puts that exact same type of discount in data field B simply because it was an easier workaround for their local users.
Which happens all the time, by the way.
Right, so the AI model is going to completely misinterpret the financial reality of the company.
That is exactly how machine learning models fail. The AI looks for mathematical patterns in specific data columns. It doesn't possess human common sense.
Right, it can't just guess.
Exactly. It cannot intuitively guess that field A in Germany means the same thing as field B in Brazil. If your SAP implementation allowed optional data fields, where some users fill out a tracking code and others just skip it, the AI correlates the wrong variables and produces wildly inaccurate predictions.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Always. AI cannot magically compensate for a messy underlying data structure.
So, if a company spends, I don't know, $10 million on an enterprise AI rollout 3 years after their SAP go live, and the AI project is declared a total failure because the data is a structural mess, who actually gets the blame?
Well, that's the thing.
The blame doesn't really belong to the AI software vendor, does it? The failure was basically baked in by the project team, who allowed those inconsistent data mappings and optional fields during blueprinting 3 years prior.
What's fascinating here is the root cause is actually a failure of the operating model itself. Organizations try to run modern, highly complex architectures using legacy IT structures.
Oh, I see.
This brings us to a critical concept from the sources: architecture evolution governance.
Okay, architecture evolution governance. That sounds like a very heavy corporate buzzword. What does that team actually do on a Tuesday?
They police the integrity of the system long term. As your compliance architecture evolves over the years to handle new regulations, new countries, and SAP platform updates, you need a dedicated governance function maintaining the structural rules.
Setting the boundaries.
Right. Without them, you get death by 1,000 localized quick fixes. A developer in Europe tweaks a data mapping to satisfy a new Spanish reporting rule, completely unaware that their change just broke a global data extraction routine used by the AI model in the US.
So the governance team acts as the bridge. The sources point out that this regulatory monitoring function has to sit exactly between the indirect tax team, who understands the actual written law, and the technology team, who understands how the SAP system processes data.
Exactly. Neither side can solve the puzzle alone.
Right.
And once that system is running, the operational monitoring has to evolve as well. You need to track real-time submission metrics, monitor automated rejection rates from government portals, and track authority API response times.
Stuff that moves fast.
Very fast.
Hmm.
And the critical insight here is that traditional SAP basis teams are generally not equipped to do this.
Right, because the basis team, the IT infrastructure folks, are essentially the building management.
Yes, great way to put it.
They make sure the servers have power, the memory isn't overloaded, and the database is running smoothly, but they aren't trained to look at application-level tax rejections.
Exactly. If an e-invoice fails to clear a government portal in Spain, the basis team might look at their dashboards, see that the SAP server is online and healthy, and assume everything is completely fine.
Meanwhile, the localized tax team is completely blind to the technical failure.
And the company is racking up regulatory fines by the minute.
Yikes.
Distinguishing between a simple client-side data error, like, say, a missing VAT number, and a government tax authority API genuinely being offline requires entirely different specialized tooling and training.
It really is a completely different world from the monolithic SAP implementations of a decade ago.
It's night and day.
So let's distill everything we've uncovered in this deep dive down to its core essence. For you listening right now, whether you are a CIO managing a massive ERP migration, a project director hiring your next wave of consultants, or a tax leader navigating global strategy, success relies entirely on anticipating continuous change.
Absolutely.
Decoupling your compliance logic from your SAP core isn't just a neat technical trick. It is the fundamental mechanism that prevents you from having to jackhammer your digital foundation every time a tax rate changes.
And your consultants can no longer hide in financial silos. They must be compliance-aware generalists who understand the integration demands of continuous transaction controls.
And the structure of your data must be rigidly protected by strong governance to feed both global tax authorities and your own future AI initiatives.
Right.
And the most important takeaway at Go Live is not the finish line.
Not even close.
It is merely day one of the continuous operations journey, which leaves us with a fascinating trajectory to consider.
The convergence of all these technologies presents an entirely new risk landscape.
Yes, I want to leave you, our listener, with a brand new thought to mull over, building on the architecture we've just discussed. We know that governments around the world are aggressively standardizing real-time continuous transaction controls.
Right.
They are building pipelines to receive structured, machine-readable data the exact second a transaction occurs in your SAP system.
And we also established that artificial intelligence relies entirely on that exact same type of perfectly structured, harmonized data to find patterns and anomalies.
So here's the provocative question to take away with you. How long before tax authorities point their own AI models directly at these real-time data streams?
When the data pipeline is already real-time and machine-readable, automated enforcement driven by AI isn't science fiction. It is the logical next step for tax authorities globally.
Imagine a scenario where a government AI instantly audits every single one of your SAP transactions as they happen. It spots a complex data mapping anomaly, correlates it with your historical filings, and automatically issues a massive penalty directly to your company.
Oh, wow.
All before your human accounting team even realizes a compliance error was made. The digital plumbing to make that happen is already being laid down today.
Which is exactly why ensuring your data is structurally sound from day one is no longer optional.
So the next time you find yourself at an SAP Go Live party, by all means, pop the champagne. You survived the cutover and you should celebrate the win, but keep your running shoes on because the starting gun for the real race just went off. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.